the tennis world has been mesmerized by the sheer force of nature that is Aryna Sabalenka, a relentless champion who bulldozes opponents with ground strokes that feel like cannon fire. Everyone assumed she was untouchable, a final boss with no weak points and an aura of invincibility. But then came the upset that shook the sport to its core. A young, fearless challenger named Alex Eala stepped onto the court and did the impossible. She not only won, but she systematically dismantled Sabalenka's game, exposing a fatal flaw that no one dared to exploit. This was not a lucky win. This was a cold, calculated assassination of a champion's strategy. Prepare to be shocked as we reveal the brutal truth behind Sabalenka's biggest weakness and how Eala is the new architect of her downfall. The roar of the crowd was not for the champion. It was a collective gasp, a sound of disbelief that reverberated through the stadium as Alex Eala, the young Filipino prodigy, raised her arms in victory. The scoreboard told a story that seemed to defy all logic and statistical probability. Aryna Sabalenka, the powerful Belarusian who had terrorized the WTA Tour with her ferocious hitting, was defeated. Not by a seasoned veteran, but by a rising star who many believed was simply not ready for the big stage. This wasn't just an upset. It was a seismic shock that sent tremors through the entire tennis ecosystem. For months, the narrative had been firmly built around the dominance of Sabalenka. She was the modern-day gladiator, a player whose raw power often rendered strategy obsolete. Opponents often stepped onto the court defeated before the first ball was struck, psychologically broken by the sheer intimidation of her game. However, Alex Eala approached the match with a different mindset. There was no fear in her eyes, only a quiet, unnerving confidence. She was not there to be a passive spectator to Sabalenka's power. She was there to solve a puzzle. Eala appeared to have arrived with a meticulously crafted game plan, a blueprint that the rest of the tour had seemingly missed. From the first point, she refused to engage in a power struggle. Instead, she changed the tempo, forcing the match into a chess match rather than a brawl. The tennis world was forced to ask an impossible question. Had Sabalenka's game finally been cracked? Was the reign of power tennis coming to a screeching halt? This victory was not just a notch on Eala's belt. It was a declaration of war against the established order. She signaled that a new era might be dawning, one where intellect and precision can triumph over sheer brute force. The upset wasn't just shocking, it was transformative, and the implications for the rest of the tour are immense. While the world was fixated on Sabalenka's thunderous forehand, Alex Eala was focusing on something else entirely. The conventional wisdom about Sabalenka was that she was a complete player with no major flaws. But Eala saw something that others overlooked. It wasn't just a lack of speed. It was a specific, technical deficiency in her movement. Specifically, her lateral movement when transitioning back to the center of the court after hitting a powerful shot. Sabalenka's power is generated by throwing her entire weight into the shot, which often leaves her off balance and vulnerable to a well-placed reply. Eala's genius lay in her ability to exploit this recovery period. She understood that Sabalenka's strength, her immense power, was also the source of her greatest tactical vulnerability. The young star used angles that the tour rarely sees. She hit with a spin and precision that forced Sabalenka to move not just side to side, but to track the ball at unnatural trajectories. Eala consistently targeted Sabalenka's backhand side, not to overpower, but to stretch her out wide, creating a massive open space on the court. Then, instead of hitting a winner, Eala would redirect the ball to the open court, a short, sharp angle that forced Sabalenka to change direction abruptly. The clumsy, off-balance lunges from the world number 2 were evidence that her movement was being dissected. This was not a case of Sabalenka having a bad day. This was a targeted, scientific attack on a physical weakness. Eala had found the key to the armor, and she twisted it repeatedly. This tactical brilliance showed that the power player is only as good as their recovery, and Sabalenka's recovery was being found wanting. It was a master class in court positioning. The physical exploitation of Sabalenka's movement was only one part of Eala's stratagem. The more devastating aspect of her victory was the psychological unraveling she triggered in her opponent. Aryna Sabalenka is known for her fiery on-court demeanor. She grunts with every shot, often screams in frustration, and is famous for smashing her racket when things go wrong. This volatile nature is often mistaken for passion, but Eala exposed it for what it is, a profound mental fragility. As Eala's unorthodox shots kept landing just out of Sabalenka's reach, the frustration began to boil over. The powerful champion's confidence began to erode, point by agonizing point. She started hitting uncharacteristic errors, forcing shots that weren't there, trying to dominate a game that had already been taken out of her hands. This was the most shocking part of the upset. Eala didn't just beat Sabalenka's game, she broke her spirit. The young Filipino remained stoic and composed, acting as a mirror to Sabalenka's chaos. It is a well-known psychological principle in tennis that a calm player can exploit the anxiety of a frustrated one. Every time Sabalenka looked to the sky in desperation or muttered in frustration to her box, her confidence drained away. Eala capitalized on this, keeping the pressure relentless. By the second set, Sabalenka's footwork became sluggish, her decision-making questionable. She was being mentally dismantled on live television. The belief that she was unbeatable had been shattered. Eala proved that to beat Sabalenka, you must first get into her head. By maintaining her cool while Sabalenka self-destructed, Eala exposed the emotional instability that has always lurked just beneath the surface of the champion's intimidating exterior. The implications of Alex Eala's victory extend far beyond a single tournament. She has inadvertently written a new tactical manual on how to beat Aryna Sabalenka. For too long, the tennis elite has been afraid to stand toe-to-toe with Sabalenka, preferring to try and match her power and inevitably losing. Eala has now provided a masterclass in neutralizing power. The blueprint is now clear for every player on the tour. Do not engage in a power-hitting contest. Instead, use heavy topspin to push Sabalenka deep and wide, forcing her to generate her own pace from uncomfortable positions. Steal her time. Disrupt her rhythm. She thrives on rhythm, on finding a groove where she can wind up and unleash. Eala's strategy involved hitting heavy, loopy shots to the backhand corner, knowing full well that Sabalenka's inside-out forehand is her primary weapon. By nullifying this shot, Eala took away Sabalenka's first line of attack. The follow-up was then to come to the net, where Sabalenka's passing shots are less precise when she is off balance. This combination of high, spinny balls and aggressive net play is a stark departure from the baseline bashing that is prevalent in the women's game. Now that the secret is out, every coach on the circuit will be analyzing this footage. We are likely to see a wave of players attempting to replicate this strategy. This victory was a watershed moment, a signal that the game is evolving. It demonstrates that physical power, while still important, is not the only determinant of success. Tactical intelligence and mental fortitude can be the great equalizer. Eala has not just won a match. She has potentially changed the way the entire tour will approach the tennis juggernaut. The question now haunting the tennis world is a simple but devastating one. Is Aryna Sabalenka's reign over? Following this shocking upset, the pressure on her is immense. She is no longer the terrifying, unbeatable force. She is now a player with a known exploit. The shock of this loss will likely stick with her for a long time. The narrative has shifted from her unbeatable power to her exploitable weaknesses. How she responds to this crisis will define the rest of her career. The greatest champions are not defined by their victories, but by how they respond to their most crushing defeats. Sabalenka now faces a crossroads. She must either adapt her game, potentially developing new layers to her movement and court craft, or risk becoming a one-trick pony whose trick has been solved. Conversely, for Alex Eala, this is just the beginning. The target is now on her back. The tennis world will be watching to see if she can maintain this level of performance, or if this was just a spectacular one-off performance. Regardless, the victory has put her on the map in the most emphatic way possible. It has changed the dynamics of the entire women's tour, Every match involving Sabalenka will now have an added layer of intrigue. Will her opponents attempt to use the Eala formula? Will she be able to withstand the psychological barrage? The shocking reality is that a young star has thrown a massive wrench into the machinery of the WTA Tour. The status quo has been disrupted. The era of fear-driven tennis may be over, and a new age of tactical warfare has begun. This is the dawn of a thrilling, uncertain, and incredibly exciting new chapter in the sport. Prepare for chaos. If you enjoyed this shocking tennis update and want to stay ahead of the biggest stories in the world, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to World Zone right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of the action. See you in the next video.